Crystal clear beaches, ancient ruins, sunsets in Santorini, delicious food served with that typical Mediterranean smile. That's what comes up when you type Greece into Google, and that's what many people imagine when they hear that name. The perfect symbol of paradise in the Aegean Sea. But behind this postcard image, there is a very different Greece. A Greece where the cradle of democracy coexists every single day with corruption, inequality, and an entire generation of young people who grow up without knowing if they will be able to build a future. It is a country where, just a few meters from the temples that inspired the world, you find abandoned buildings, closed shops, and neighborhoods forgotten even by the government itself. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to the side that doesn't appear in the pretty pictures or tourist guides. Here, the same hand that serves wine also holds 3 jobs to pay the rent. The same blue sea that enchants tourists is home to ports crowded with people fleeing war and hunger. If you only know Greece from photos of Mykonos, Santorini, and the Parthenon, get ready. Because now begins a tour of the dark side of the so-called Land of the Gods. Number 1. Location and general information. Greece is located in southern Europe, in a strategic position connecting the continent to the Mediterranean Sea and the east. It borders Turkey, Albania, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. But in practice, what stands out are the more than 6,000 islands scattered across the most absurd blue you will ever see on a map. Not all of them are inhabited, of course. In fact, just over 200 have a permanent population. But names like Crete, Santorini, Mykonos, and Rhodes are part of the imagination of anyone who has ever dreamed of setting foot in Greece. The capital is Athens, where almost half of the country's population lives, and that's where the contrast is most striking. On one side, temples, ruins, and living history on every corner. On the other, urban chaos, gridlocked traffic, dilapidated buildings, and social problems knocking at the door. With just over 10 million inhabitants, Greece is small when you compare it to neighbors such as Italy or Turkey. But in terms of cultural, historical, and symbolic influence, it is huge. It is from here that much of what shapes the world today originated: philosophy, democracy, the Olympic Games, and a mythology that still features in films, TV series, book covers, and tattoo studio walls. But when we talk about Greece today, we can't get stuck in the past, because despite being part of the European Union, having a location that any country in the world would envy, and one of the most coveted coastlines on the planet, Greece carries a heavy list of challenges: a fragile economy, a broken public system, political instability, unemployment, and growing inequality. Now that you know where it is on the map, it's time to go back in time. Because to understand how Greece became this country of contrasts, half postcard, half collapse, we need to understand the history that brought it here. Number 2. History. Democracy, theater, philosophy, the Olympic Games. Practically everything that became the foundation of Western civilization came from this piece of land surrounded by sea. But real life was never all glory. After the heyday of ancient Greece, with names like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and Alexander the Great, came a heavy sequence of domination. First came the Romans, then the Byzantines, and finally the Ottomans, who stayed there for almost 4 centuries. Independence only came in 829, and even then calm did not come easily. The 19th century was a mixture of coups, wars, and crises. And in the 20th century, more turmoil. 2 world wars, a violent civil war, and a military dictatorship between 1967 and 74. It was only in the late 70s that the country began to breathe as a true democracy, and in the 80s it tried to align itself with Europe. The big milestone came in 2001 when it joined the Eurozone. It seemed at last that Greece was on its way. Rich, modern, organized. But no, the euro brought easy credit, public works everywhere, skyrocketing consumption, and almost zero accountability. The country spent years spending more than it could afford, cooking the books and kicking the can down the road. To make matters worse, 2004 arrived with the Olympic Games in Athens. A new stadium, a showcase for the world, promises of development. But behind the glitz, the bill was already coming due. The official crash came in 2009 when the new government opened the black box and revealed that the fiscal situation was much worse than anyone had imagined. Then came the domino effect. Intervention by the European Union, billion-dollar loans, austerity measures, cuts in healthcare, education, pensions, unemployment, protests, strikes, and an entire generation leaving the country. The crisis became a global symbol of how everything breaks down when the system rots. And to this day, the scars are everywhere. Number 3. The beginning of the collapse. As I mentioned earlier, the first step towards Greece's modern collapse began in 2004, the year the country became a showcase for the whole world. The Olympics returned home to Athens after more than 2,000 years since the original Games, and the Greek government promised to deliver a historic event. And it did. A new stadium, an expanded subway system, tunnels, highways, bridges, an airport, an Olympic village, construction everywhere, and of course, money that didn't exist. The world applauded, the stands were packed, the Olympic flame shone brighter than ever. But as soon as the lights went out, reality set in. The final bill? 9 billion euros, a monstrous debt for a country that was already in the red. And the most absurd thing is that almost everything was left unused. Empty stadiums, dry swimming pools, courts overgrown with weeds, rusty bleachers in the middle of the city. The Olympic Village, which was supposed to become affordable housing, turned into a ghost town, abandoned buildings, structures falling apart. Years later, at the height of the migration crisis, part of these spaces became makeshift shelters for refugees. People sleeping in tents in the middle of a cracked gymnasium built to house elite athletes. A scene that sums up, without needing a caption, the distance between the Olympic dream and reality. Today, anyone passing by sees a concrete graveyard, a monument to the failure of a country that wanted to show its strength and ended up exposing its fragility to the whole world. And the problem is that this was only the beginning. Number 4. Poverty and inequality. When the bubble burst, it wasn't just numbers that collapsed, it was real life. People lost their homes, their jobs, their futures, and even today, the scars are everywhere. Unemployment, which was once the highest in Europe, has improved, but it is far from stable. In March 2025, it rose to 9%, which means more than 415,000 people are out of work. And the shock is even greater when we look at young people. Those between the ages of 15 and 24 face unemployment of over 25%. That means more than 55,000 young people trying and failing to find a job in a country that sells itself as a tourist paradise, but can't even guarantee a future for its own people. And if there are no jobs, there is no money. Poverty also shows no mercy. In 2024, more than 26% of the population, almost 2,700,000 people, live on the edge, on a tightrope. And even after receiving government assistance, almost 20% are still technically living in poverty. And yet, on paper, the economy is growing. GDP rose by more than 2% in the year. But this money does not reach everyone. It is concentrated in tourism, consumption by the richest, and foreign investment, basically money from foreigners. Meanwhile, inflation is rampant. It averaged 3% in 2024, weighing heavily on what hurts the most: energy and food. The result? It's in the streets, strikes, protests, pot banging, because, in practice, the crisis never went away. Number 5. Addiction and illegal substances. Amidst unemployment, frustration, and a lack of future, a silent enemy took over the streets of Greece: addiction. Without work and without prospects, many people sought escape wherever they could. Cannabis, which was already common, became almost part of the landscape. In Athens alone, on weekends, more than 500,000 cannabis cigarettes are smoked per day. And this cuts across all classes. But what came next was much worse. During the height of the crisis, sisa emerged, nicknamed poor man's coke, a methamphetamine made with battery acid, motor oil, and solvent, sold for €2. Cheap, devastating, and created, as they say there, for a society without hope. It spread among the homeless, the unemployed, and the forgotten, and it brought outbreaks of violence, infections, delirium, and mental breakdowns. All this while the world continued to post sunsets in Santorini. The healthcare system, already stretched to the limit by cuts, simply couldn't cope, and elite drugs such as cocaine also exploded. Sewage analysis shows that on festive dates, Athens alone consumed almost 3 kilograms of the substance per day, almost double the normal amount. The crisis brought other dangerous habits: illegal sale of sedatives, heavy alcohol abuse, especially in the poorest neighborhoods. Today, in the squares of central Athens, amid historic ruins, the scene is one of people walking like zombies, drugged, lost. Because the fall of a nation is not measured only in GDP and inflation, it is also measured in the lives that have been lost along the way. But do you think that's all there is to it? Number 6. Crime. The social crisis in Greece has also hit public safety hard, and although the country still has a reputation for being peaceful, you only have to walk down certain streets in Athens to realize that things have changed, and changed a lot. Unfortunately, more than 60% of residents say they are afraid of the capital and simply avoid going out alone at night. In the Omonia Square area, once bustling, the scene today is one of abandonment. During the day, users wander aimlessly. At night, drug dealers, pimps, and thieves appear. It has become an open market for everything the police pretend not to see. Those who live there know, after a certain time, those who show up here aren't here to hang out. They're here to buy or sell drugs, people, or fear. In the suburbs, it's no different. In the Menidi area, there are places where one police officer is responsible for more than 3,000 people. Gangs rule, drug trafficking is on the rise, and muggings are part of everyday life. Even central neighborhoods have become dangerous areas. Syringes litter the ground, thefts occur in broad daylight, and there is constant tension. And those on the margins, homeless people, sex workers, drug users, are exposed to everything: violence, abuse, and exploitation. The lack of social structure has pushed these people to rock bottom and left them there. It is precisely in this scenario that another phenomenon is beginning to explode. Number 7. Prostitution. Another painful reflection of the Greek social crisis was the explosion of prostitution. There have always been legal brothels on Greek soil, with the profession regulated by law. But never has the activity been as widespread and as cheap as during the hardest years of the crisis. Without jobs, without support, without a way out, thousands of women, and also some men, ended up resorting to the sex trade. And it wasn't for luxury. It was to eat, to pay rent, to survive. The reports are brutal. Young women offering sex in exchange for a sandwich or a cheese pie. Where the market was once dominated by foreign women from Eastern Europe, now 8 out of 10 are Greek, and many are between 17 and 20 years old. And as supply exploded, prices plummeted. Before the crisis, a session cost an average of 50 euros. Years later, women were charging 2 euros for half an hour. That's right, less than a cup of coffee. And all this happening just a few meters away from tourists taking pictures, eating ice cream, enjoying the land of the gods, without even imagining what goes on in the street next door. The impact went even further. With the explosion of prostitution came an increase in the use of sedatives, cocaine, and alcohol, ways to endure a routine that had become torture. Along with this came outbreaks of HIV, sexually transmitted diseases, and the collapse of public health, which already dominated the country. Non-governmental organizations, churches, and volunteer groups tried to stem the tide. But the state was bankrupt. No structure, no support, nothing. It is one of the heaviest and most ignored chapters of the dark side that many people prefer not to see. Number 8. Xenophobia. While the country is known for its ruins, islands, and perfect sunsets, there is a shadow that has been growing for years: the rise of xenophobia. What once seemed like isolated incidents is now part of everyday life. And the target is always the same: outsiders. Syrians who fled the war, Afghans who escaped the Taliban, Nigerians, Iraqis, Pakistanis, entire families who crossed the Aegean Sea in crowded boats, leaving behind rubble, hunger, and fear, just to try to start over somewhere else. The islands that were once tourist paradises, Lesbos, Samos, Chios, Crete, Gavdos, have become points of arrival and also of tension. In 2024 alone, the number of refugees there increased more than sixfold. More than 5,000 people arrived in less than a year, and with them came pressure on schools, hospitals, shelters, and jobs. The result: an absurd rise in hate speech, prejudice, and even violence. Athens has become a stage for physical and verbal attacks, as well as persecution. Far-right groups go out at night to intimidate those who, in their view, don't look Greek. And not just refugees. Black, Arab, Asian, and even Eastern Europeans experience this every day. Delivery drivers, waiters, attendants. People who just want to work, but who carry the risk of becoming a target. Reports from organizations such as Amnesty International show that almost half of immigrants say they are afraid to simply walk down the street. And if they need help, from the police, a hospital, any public service, the response is often coldness or neglect. Those who fled war, hunger, and persecution ended up finding another kind of battle, right in the heart of Europe. It's yet another portrait of the dark side that no one shows in the tourist guides. Number 9. Corruption. Amidst so much unemployment, violence, and prejudice, many people in Greece come to the same conclusion. The biggest problem is at the top. Corruption has become part of everyday life. It's no secret, nor is it new. What changes is the size of the hole and the nerve. In 2024, Greece scored 49 points on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. Among the 27 countries of the European Union, only Bulgaria and Hungary scored worse. And these are not just numbers. This is real life. With each new scandal, the population's disgust grows. Ministers involved in overpriced contracts, congressmen pocketing bribes, shell companies in the names of relatives receiving millions. And no one pays. The most outrageous case was in 2023. 57 people died in a train disaster caused by a failure in the signaling system. The funds to modernize it had already been released years earlier, but disappeared. In the same year, an espionage scandal revealed that journalists and opposition politicians had been illegally wiretapped. Everything led to the government. The investigation stalled. Lack of evidence. Impunity prevailed. And when it's not outright theft, it's the old way of doing things. Laws that change to protect allies. Friendly judges who turn a blind eye. Today, less than 30% of Greeks trust the justice system. And the message is clear. The rules only apply to those who have no power. And while that doesn't change, everything else syncs with it. Number 10. Tourism, the new problem. And to finish this tour of Greece's dark side, let's talk about something that, in theory, should be the salvation, but is becoming part of the problem: tourism. The country receives more than 30 million tourists a year, almost 3 times its own population. People from all over the world want to see the sunset in Santorini, explore the narrow streets of Mykonos, or visit the ruins of Athens. Tourism accounts for 25% of GDP. But this success comes at a price, and those who live there are feeling it, and feeling it hard. Santorini, for example, has only 15,000 residents but receives more than 2 million visitors a year. The streets are congested, there is a shortage of water and space, and there is trash everywhere. The infrastructure is collapsing. Rents have skyrocketed. Residents are being evicted because renting to tourists is much more profitable. And it's not just on the islands. In Athens, more than 105,000 properties have been converted from housing to seasonal accommodation. The average price of real estate rose by more than 14% in 2024, driven by foreign investors looking for easy profits or golden visas. The streets are no longer community spaces. Neighborhood shops have closed. Family restaurants have become cafes for tourists. Greek life now revolves around the tourist season. People work for 6 months. The rest of the year is just survival. On the islands, there is trash everywhere, water shortages, and even the beaches are being surrounded by resorts. The government has promised to curb predatory tourism, but in practice, it has been nothing but talk. Tourism, which could have been the solution, has become yet another driver of inequality. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to Bello Mundo, and share it with someone who needs to see Greece beyond the postcard image. Until next time.